This is a response to Pyrrho314's latest video on a spiritual sense. I haven't seen all your videos, Pyrrho, but I know a lot of them that I've looked at deal with spirituality or the idea of the spirit in some way. This is the first one of yours I've seen that's used spiritual in the context of sense and also makes such an overt reference to embodiment. I'm sure you've done it before, but as I say, I haven't seen all your videos. So you're coming from a position of embodied mind and a kind of evolutionary development of the embodied mind. And I think the relationship that you draw between lust and reproduction is a good one, because that illustrates, I think, really well the discontinuities that experience gives us between between how we feel and what the function of those feelings are, or from an evolutionary perspective at least. So I think all that sets it up really interestingly to talk about this thing about spiritual sense. And I mean, I know what you're talking about. I mean, I've had some of the experiences that you're alluding to there, that sense of oneness, the sense of one's boundaries dissolving, a kind of, I don't want to sound pretentious, but that sense of timelessness and touching the void, touching eternity, those kind of experiences I've had some contact with. And I guess they must be reasonably common, since people do seem to be, a lot of people seem to have indicated that they've had that experience. Whether there's a greater significance to that beyond just personal interest, I don't know. I mean, obviously, given its existence within a lot of religious contexts, people do tend to ascribe certain values and certain locations of wisdom, perhaps, in those feelings, which I'm not altogether sure that they are validated. But I know what you mean, and yeah. But I'm interested in the relationship between those feelings, those sensory impressions, if you like, and this word spiritual. And you'll have to excuse me, I guess I'm just following my own lines of interest here. But when I think about spiritual, it's a term I have a lot of problems with, and the only way I can get a purchase on it, which I feel reasonably comfortable with, is by treating it ultimately as a kind of substance metaphor, which I think makes sense, because we tend to contrast the idea of the spiritual with the idea of the concrete, or the material. And when we're thinking about material, we tend to think about reasonably solid materials and tactile material, that kind of thing. So I think there's an argument to be made that when we're using the word spiritual, we're using it as part of a complex metaphor to do with substances, in contrast to hard, physical, bounded, firm substances. So there's a suggestion there, I think, in the word physical, in the word spiritual, where we're alluding towards a substance which is not firm, not fixed, not bounded, not kind of located in time and space, the way that rocks, for example, are located within time and space. And I think in that sense, spiritual is absolutely the right term. I'm thinking about something like a spirit, the literal chemical spirits, the things that evaporate. If you pour them on a desktop, methylated spirits, you pour it on a desktop, it flows out like a liquid, and then it just disappears. It just becomes part of the surroundings of the atmosphere and disappears from view in a relatively progressive way. You detect it through your sense of smell for a while, and then that disappears, and you can almost feel it becoming more and more diaphanous until it's just fills the room or fills the environment completely and becomes one with the entirety of the space. That's almost literally what happens with spirits. And I think there's an allusion to that. I mean, certainly when we call ghosts spirits, there's this idea that ghosts are, as well as certainly cartoon ghosts, are kind of light and diaphanous and airy and floaty and can go through walls and can kind of fill spaces in the way that evaporating liquids and evaporating volatile substances like methylated spirits can do. So I think there's something there about that. And I think this is absolutely an embodied sense. And I think we're also capable of taking this substance metaphor beyond its normal reach. If we think about the opposite of a very, very firm rock-like substance, which completely fills the space it's in, is completely bounded in that space. If we kind of go to the opposite end of that and think about something which is ultimately spiritual, and just keep pushing our understanding of that, which I think we have a tendency to do, then it becomes more translucent. It becomes lighter and lighter, and it feels less and less. It has less and less mass, but spreads itself more and more through space. And I guess the kind of logical continuity of that is it becomes almost like negative space. It almost empties itself. It goes beyond just being not there. It becomes its own absence, if that makes any sense at all, and distributes that absence through the environment, I suppose. I'm not saying it really does, by the way. I'm just saying that's kind of how the logic of our embodied minds, I think, would tend to take that particular progressive journey of the substance metaphor. Yeah, I think that's all I've got to say really on that. Spirit. There was something else I was going to talk about, actually. What was that? No, that was it. Okay, I'll leave it there. Thanks very much.